Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do part 2.5 of our Big Beech bench project, and really the main focus today is going to be using my Alaskan chainsaw mill to get these big beech logs really knocked down to a more manageable size. Right now they're still too heavy to lift with the front loader of my tractor. They're still too large to go on my bandsaw mill, and so I'm going to make use of the Alaskan sawmill to really get these things down to better size to handle, and then be able to get those pieces and parts over to the sawmill for really the final cuts and processing. So today I've got my steel 461 rigged up with a 28-inch bar and a ripping chain. And really the main difference with a ripping chain, it just has a shallower angle filed on the teeth, and so it's better cutting into the grain as we go down the log this way. And I've got two types of Alaskan sawmills. This one, they tend to call this the mini mill, or a beam cutter, or an edger. And really this one, I just have a LVL beam here with a aluminum track on one edge, and I'll just run this down the log and make a vertical cut with this. And this is really good for making beams or making an initial cut into a log that you're going to later take as a cant and slab off. And that's the other kind of Alaskan mill I have. It's really a slabbing jig, which would really put the saw horizontal and cut that way. And hopefully I'll get to use that in a future video, but today we're going to use the mini mill and knock these guys down to size. And because it's for this bench project, I really actually want the cutoffs, or the outer parts of the log. That's what I'm targeting here. I'm making cuts to really maximize the size of those pieces. I will be left with a cant that if there's any good wood left, I'll take it over to the sawmill and get some boards out of it. But really, because of these logs and the size and the project and the fact that these logs have some rot and hollow sections in the middle, really I'm focusing here today on getting nice big cutoffs, maximizing those cutoffs to really best work for the bench project. So I think we're ready to get started here. Just gonna give the saw a chance to warm up, put on my chaps. I'll move the camera, and then we'll start slicing into these logs. Now normally when I use this edger, I would make a vertical cut, then I would roll the log basically 90 degrees, move this board and track to the new flat section we just made, and keep cutting off that way to square it up. But because these are so big and they're so unwieldy, and I'm really going after the cutoffs, I'm going to start with just the vertical cut here. Then I'm going to flip this board around, put the track on the other side, make a vertical cut down the other side of the log. I don't know if it's obvious in the video, but even with the 28-inch bar, these guys are about 30 inches right now as I've trimmed them. This is not going to make it all the way through. So after I make those two nice straight vertical cuts with the jig and the guide board, I'll then come back and really freehand it to get the last little part of the log cut through at the bottom. And then I'll basically take those two side cutoffs off, and at that point I will rotate the log 90 degrees and go for a top cutoff. Now the bottom of this log, it had kind of a crotch on that end. I'm probably not going to bother with the bottom, but we'll see how things go at the end. So I think we're almost ready to go here, and if you want to stick around, we'll get started. Okay, here we are after our first two vertical cuts using the mini mill and the guide board, and these went pretty good. This first side over here went fairly easy considering beech is such a hard wood. Being green, freshly cut beech really helps a lot. I've sawed dried logs, and those are a real bear with the chainsaw mill, but green beech was not too bad. On this side over here had a bunch of knots, and the saw worked a heck of a lot harder on this side. But those are the first two initial cuts with the guide board, and those should be close to vertical. One of the problems that I'm reminded of today, and I haven't dealt with this for years, is when you're doing this on a breezy day, sawdust can get in the wrong place. I mean, well, among other things, it's gone down my shirt and down my neck, but it can actually get onto the guide board and throw your cut off a little bit from vertical, and I need to pay better attention than that as we go along, because I noticed the angle was drifting a little bit on that second cut because the wind was blowing the sawdust right in front of the track. But yeah, those are the first two cuts. So what I'm going to do now is take the mini mill slider jig off of the chainsaw and come back, and I'll really just try and freehand these last two cuts to get that last bottom section. Hopefully the bar's going to reach. I don't actually know that it will, but I think I'll have enough range on that bar to get that last little bit down there. Generally, you don't want to freehand it with a ripping chain. It could be dangerous, but since I'm going to be doing it down through the slot of the existing cut, that really makes it quite a bit safer, and should go pretty well, but we'll see in a few minutes. All right, here we are with both sides cut off of the log, and it's some real pretty wood. And beech doesn't always have a whole lot of character, but this one has some real pretty coloring in the heartwood, and then down on the end closest to the camber there's some spalting, which really looks neat. So I think this is going to make some nice pretty wood for a bench, and hopefully I'll be able to salvage a few boards off of this too once I get it over to the sawmill, and that'll be real pretty for some indoor projects or some furniture. So at this point, I'm going to go grab my tractor and get rid of those two big cutoffs. They still weigh a lot. I mean, I can barely budge them by hand. So I'll get the tractor over here, get those out of the way. And that center section could actually fit on the mill, the bandsaw mill at this point, but I think it's going to be unwieldy, and it's going to be a lot of work to get it over there. So since I have everything already rigged up over here in the field, once I come back, I'm gonna just rotate that center section 90 degrees and use the mini mill one more time to cut off that top section, which is got a real, it's a real nice chunk of good wood above that center rot. Now the bottom section, there's a crotch down there. There's a lot of good wood there, but as far as, cutting it with a sawmill, I don't think it's worth the trouble, so that'll probably become firewood down there. So let's go get the tractor and start moving this stuff around. right, so here's what's left after we sliced top and bottom cutoffs off of the remaining centerpiece. And so this piece down here on the ground, that's going to go towards the bench project. I'll be able to get a nice piece for the bench out of that, either for the top or for the legs. And I think I'm going to be able to make 2 or 3 benches out of just this one log, but we'll see. Now these other 2 pieces, the one here in the center of the screen now, that's really the remaining center of the log, and there's rot and hollow section going all the way through, but I see a lot of nice, really pretty wood that I can slice off of this and get some small boards, which will be really ideal for some woodworking projects. And then this was the bottom section that it does have a, I don't know if we can see that, it's got a crotch in it going down to what was the base of the tree. So that's got some weird shapes, but I was thinking about this while I was eating my lunch. I can actually quarter saw those pieces and get some pretty wood. And then going up to this end, after the kind of crotch goes back to solid wood, there's really pretty wood up here. So I'm going to be able to get a lot of nice bonus wood out of this piece as well, which I really wasn't planning on, but that'll be a really nice bonus. Now, 2 things I want to talk about right here. First, look how pretty this wood is. Beech is often very underrated wood for sawmill projects, for woodworking, for fine lumber. And in fact, I think the most common use of beech wood is for pallets, which really is a shame, because it is really pretty wood, especially when it has some staining or some spalting. You just get these beautiful patterns as you get to the heart of the log. And so that's the first thing to point out here. Don't write off beech. It's really beautiful wood. And again, in terms of hardness, I think I mentioned this in an earlier video. This is somewhere between red oak and white oak in terms of hardness, and in terms of longevity. If you were to use it outdoors, it's not a great outdoor wood, but it's better than red oak and almost as good as white oak. And then the second thing I wanted to point out was the cut quality of the Alaskan mill. And keep in mind, I was using the mini mill today, which is really just for edging and for cutting beams. This isn't the slab rig for the Alaskan mill. This is the mini mill. But the quality of this cut is really good. And I'll see if I can get close here. You know, you can see some saw marks, but this is not much worse than you can do on a bandsaw mill. And so I felt like that was worth pointing out here. You know, if you have a sharp chain and a good solid guide board, and you can make a nice straight flat cut, you end up with very good quality out of an Alaskan mill. So you know, that's something to keep in mind. I haven't used this Alaskan mill setup for probably 5 or 6 years, just because I've been using bandsaw mills so much in that time. And you know, for this project I had to break it out because it was the only sane way to handle this big log that was too heavy for the tractor and too big for my Wooden Mills HM122. But in reality, you get great cut quality out of these Alaskan mills if you have everything set up right and working right. The main disadvantage is going to be productivity. As you noticed, it's slow going, especially on a hardwood like this. You know, if you're doing pine, you can zip through it, but on a hardwood like beech, the Alaskan mill can be a little bit slow to use. But you know, at the end of the day, the results are very good, considering you're talking about I don't know, for the mini mill, I think that's under $100 for that rig, and even a good Grandberg slab rig is just $200 to $300. So that's a much smaller investment than a bandsaw mill. And as long as you have a big enough chainsaw, you know, I think 70 cc and up, this is a really good option for milling some really nice quality lumber. Certainly if you have to do milling out in the field where you can't get a bandsaw mill to a certain area, this is a great way to go. All right, so I'm back over near my sawmill, and I just want to make a few final observations to close things out. So this is all the wood that we got out of that log. Actually, this is the entire log. It's just been sliced and diced a whole bunch of different ways. These are the two main cutoffs that are the first two pieces I started with this morning. And there's a lot of good wood in here. This is almost all good wood. And I should be able to get some pretty thick live edge slabs out of this, and then the very bottom part that's still going to be rounded, that'll go towards the bench project, either as a bench top or for the bench legs. And then this was the centerpiece left after we cut off the two sides, and I've really got one really solid, I don't know, maybe about a 16-inch by 7 or 8-inch piece there that's all good wood. The center section, I'll be scavenging that for small boards, basically for small woodworking projects. And then that outer piece closest to the camera, that has a crotch in it from where the base of the tree was lobed and kind of grew together. And that, I'll get some good wood out of about half of that. Then the other half will be those two separate pieces, which I'm going to try and quarter saw. And again, that's going to result in some small pieces of lumber, but that'll be good for all kinds of you know, craft projects or small woodworking projects. So there's a lot of wood here. It's unfortunate I had to work so hard to break this down to get it into a form that was suitable to fit on my sawmill or even to be lifted by the tractor. And I was thinking a couple of days ago, you know, the easiest solution to this problem would have been a bigger tractor and a bigger sawmill. I don't know, that's probably not a feasible solution for most of us. I mean, that's, you know, the $60,000 or $70,000 solution, really. But barring that kind of idiotic solution to solving problems with money, this was really a kind of the best way I could approach this, using the Alaskan sawmill, just breaking it down, working around the center section of the log that was rotten, and really extracting the key pieces of wood I needed for both the bench project, and then have some leftover pieces of lumber. So I think that's going to wrap things up for today. Again, this is part 2.5 of this series. In part 3, I will start getting this wood on the sawmill, and both to start cutting these pieces down for the outdoor bench. And I'll probably make 2 benches, I think, maybe 3. But then we'll start working some of these other pieces and see if we can get some bonus wood out of it for just general woodworking projects. So that's going to wrap things up for today. As always, thanks for watching.